We drink to celebrate, we drink to cope, we drink for special occasions, or just because, hey, we survived another year. This love for booze is a truly universal human experience, shared across almost every culture and by people all over the globe. Let's face it, humans are wired for addiction. It's not just alcohol, we've got plenty of vices that keep us hooked, like coffee or nicotine. But if you were to crown the undisputed OG of this lineup, it would have to be alcohol. Throughout history, pretty much every attempt to ban the bottle has ended in epic failure. And today, it's still going strong, with the world chugging down over 26 billion gallons of the stuff every single year. So when exactly did humanity first start hitting the bottle? And with so many other ways to catch a buzz these days, why are we still so obsessed with it? Just like we humans still love snacking on fruit today, pretty much every omnivore out there can't get enough of it either. The main reason animals are so drawn to fruit boils down to one thing: sweetness. Out in the wild, sugar is the ultimate high-octane fuel source. Because of this, it's a constant all-out war in the wild to score some fruit. You can basically break this battle down into two stages: round 1, which happens inside the fruit itself, and round 2, which goes down on the outside. Welcome to round 1. This is a microscopic turf war where all sorts of bacteria and fungi duke it out to claim this jackpot of water and simple sugars. And entering the ring is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the fungus world, yeast. Yeast either crashes the party from the air or is already chilling inside the fruit. Once the fruit gets nice and ripe with plenty of sugar, the yeast gorges on it, rapidly converting that sugar into alcohol. This little magic trick is exactly what we call fermentation. Once this happens, the alcohol basically kicks out other competing bacteria and fungi, effectively preserving the fruit so it stays edible for much longer. So, out in nature, catching a whiff of alcohol from a piece of fruit is actually a great sign, right? It means the fruit is perfectly ripe, ready to eat, and totally safe from nasty bacteria. Once that sweet, boozy scent hits the air, all sorts of animals come swarming in, and that's when round 2 kicks off. Naturally, humans were front and center for this second round. If we got lucky and stumbled upon a seasonal jackpot, an all-you-can-eat fruit buffet, we didn't just get a delicious feast, we also got to experience the thrill of catching a buzz. Cue the million-dollar questions. Can we make this awesome feeling even stronger? How do we make this happen more often? Eventually, once early humans settled into safe caves and figured out how to carve bowls out of stone or wood, they started hoarding fruit in one spot and fermenting it on purpose. And just like that, we went from randomly snacking on fermented fruit to inventing what we'd basically call the first booze. Fruit was hands down the easiest ingredient to turn into alcohol. It was packed with water and loaded with simple sugars, basically an all-you-can-eat buffet that yeast could effortlessly break down. Of course, as time went on, people started making booze out of way more than just fruit. In colder regions where fruit was hard to come by, folks diluted honey with water to ferment it, creating mead. And once farming took off, they started brewing alcohol using highly preservable grains. But fruit wines came with a catch. You had to drink them as fast as possible right after making them. The moment oxygen hit the liquid, dormant bacteria hiding inside would wake up, turn the alcohol into acetic acid, and basically ruin your stash by turning it into vinegar. Meanwhile, grain-based drinks like beer had their own annoying hurdle during the brewing process. You see, yeast can only break down simple sugars like monosaccharides and disaccharides. Unlike fruit, grains are packed with starches, which are complex sugars, so brewers needed an enzyme to chop those starches down into bite-sized pieces. Enter amylase. Sadly, the easiest place to find amylase was none other than human spit. So for early grain alcohol, having people chew the grains up and spit them out to kickstart the fermentation process was actually the most common method. It was the industry standard of the time. Booze as we know it today really took shape when Bronze Age civilizations started leveling up. Over in the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians figured out a genius hack, coating the insides of their jugs with pine resin, which kept the wine fresh way longer and allowed them to ship it overseas for export. Meanwhile, the Egyptians started sprouting barley to make malt, and the Chinese figured out how to cultivate koji mold, finally giving brewers a much-needed alternative to human spit for getting that sweet, sweet amylase. And thanks to some seriously booming trade networks, drinking cultures from all over the map started mingling and mixing. Beer made its way up to Northern Europe, vineyards started popping up all across the Mediterranean, and brewing tech even traveled back and forth along the Silk Road, reaching as far east as China. Believe it or not, traces of this massive cultural exchange are still hidden in the Chinese language today, like their words for honey and grape. Take the Chinese word for honey, mi. It was actually borrowed from the Tocharians, an ancient Indo-European people, serving as rock-solid proof that mead made its way all the way to China. And get this, the Chinese word for grape, putao, is actually a direct phonetic rip from madawa, the word the ancient Greco-Bactrians in Central Asia used for their wine jugs. Since ancient times, booze has held a massive religious significance, mostly thanks to its mind-altering properties. That's why pretty much every mythology around the globe features some kind of deity or figure who invents alcohol and passes the secret down to humans. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, when major religions essentially split the world in two, and you start seeing completely different takes on drinking based on their core values. For instance, Christianity held wine sacred, treating it as a God-given symbol of life and the blood of Christ. On the flip side, Islam, which came along a bit later, dropped the ban hammer on alcohol, arguing that it clouded faith and paralyzed reason. But ironically enough, this clash of ideologies actually sparked the next massive evolution in booze. See, regions like Mesopotamia and Persia had incredibly deep-rooted traditions of brewing beer and making wine since ancient times. Then Islam rolls in and says, nope, no more drinking. So instead of drinking it, they started treating it as a subject of scientific inquiry, an ingredient for alchemy. They boiled it, dried it, froze it, melted it, basically subjected it to every crazy experiment imaginable. And through all that mad science, they discovered pure alcohol. They noticed that if you heat wine or beer to a very specific temperature, this suspiciously clear liquid forms and drips off the lid of the container. Turns out that liquid was the highly concentrated essence of the exact stuff that gets you drunk. Originally, the Arabic term was al-kul. Interestingly, kul actually referred to a fine powder used for eyeliner and makeup. Over time, as alchemists dissolved, filtered, and distilled these materials, the term eventually shifted to mean any purified distilled liquid. Later on, this word made its way over to Europe, where it eventually morphed into the word we all know today, alcohol. Long story short, this distilled alcohol from the Islamic world became a massive game changer, widely used for things like sanitizing wounds and dyeing fabrics, basically ushering in a whole new era for medicine and industry. But when this distillation tech leaked out to regions that didn't ban drinking, it opened up a whole different kind of new world. See, the old-school booze maxed out at a pretty low ABV and left you with killer hangovers, but through distillation, people could extract this pure, high-octane liquid gold, completely stripped of nasty impurities. This was the real deal, the ultimate booze. They literally called it the water of life. Europe, which was constantly rubbing shoulders with the Islamic world, jumped on this tech super early, taking it back home to research and level it up on their own terms. In Salerno, Italy, basically the medical hub of Europe at the time, doctors spearheaded the research. Meanwhile, over on the Islamic-ruled Iberian Peninsula, alchemists were the ones taking the reins. And you bet the Catholic monks weren't about to miss out on the action either. After all, wine was an absolute non-negotiable for Holy Communion. Because of this, monasteries were essentially home to the most elite master brewers of the era. So when they heard that the absolute pure essence of alcohol had been discovered, yeah, they just couldn't resist getting their hands on it. That's exactly how distilled spirits earned their legendary nickname among Europeans, the water of life. In medieval Latin, it was called aqua vitae. As this concept spread across the continent, the term morphed and evolved, eventually giving us familiar names like aquavit, eau de vie, and yep, even whiskey. And the ingredients they used were just as wildly diverse. Down in southern Europe, in places like southern France and Italy, they distilled fruit wines to create spirits like brandy and cognac. Over in Scotland, they fermented barley just like beer, then distilled it to give the world Scotch whiskey. Meanwhile, folks up in northern and eastern Europe turned to potatoes and wheat to brew their beloved vodka. This distillation craze didn't just stop in Europe, it eventually crossed the Atlantic and hit the New World. European settlers played a massive role in this as they started putting down roots in the Americas. Those who settled in the balmy Caribbean perfected their distillation tech using molasses left over from massive sugarcane plantations. And that's exactly how rum was born, the legendary drink of sailors and pirates. This rum also became an absolute massive hit with early American colonists. Fun fact, the Arabs, who literally invented this distillation tech, called their spirits arak. As it crossed the oceans during the era of imperialism, Europeans tweaked it to arak, which essentially became the catch-all term for hard liquor during the early colonial days. In English, arak literally translates to sweat. They named it that because the condensation forming during distillation looked exactly like beads of sweat. The history of bourbon whiskey, the undisputed soul drink of America today, kicked off when this distillation tech finally set up shop on the U.S. mainland. Post-independence, pioneers flocked to corn-rich states like Kentucky and Tennessee, turning them into massive hubs for crafting these spirits. And to this day, names like Kentucky bourbon and Tennessee whiskey still carry legendary world-class reputations. So there you have it. Booze has literally been by our side since the dawn of humanity, constantly evolving right alongside us. But as alcohol got stronger and more refined, the dark side of drinking became a lot harder to ignore. About 200 years ago, the medical world finally started taking alcoholism seriously as a full-blown disease. And right here in the US, things got so intense that the government actually pulled the ultimate wild card in the early 20th century: prohibition. It just goes to show that you really can have too much of a good thing. Without a little moderation, even the water of life can become a poison. Honestly, the history of alcohol is so deep and insanely complex when you start breaking it down drink by drink. That's why for today's video, we just scratched the surface, focusing mainly on where it all began. But don't worry, we're definitely planning to roll out more videos diving deep into the crazy origin stories of all your favorite drinks in the future. Until then, enjoy that well-deserved post-work drink, but remember to keep it in moderation and stay healthy out there. Here at Flat Archive, we're just getting started on our mission to uncover the world's most fascinating facts and stories. If you enjoyed today's video, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join our growing community of curious minds. Every single click goes a long way in helping us bring you more awesome stories in the future. This has been Flat Archive. Thanks for watching.